She was 6 years old, sitting beside a crate of bruised apples under the desert sun, left behind, like something forgotten. He was a single father, barely getting by with a boy of his own and a heart still grieving. He could have kept walking, but he didn't. What happened next wasn't just an act of kindness, it was the beginning of a quiet miracle. If stories of love, resilience, and second chances speak to your heart, take a moment to subscribe. These are the stories that remind us what truly matters. Now let me tell you what happened. The sun over Sable Ridge didn't just shine, it scorched. It beat down on the rust-colored dirt with a vengeance, turning the edges of the metal storage units and delivery trucks into stovetops. Even the wind, when it dared blow, felt like the exhale of an oven. There were no trees for shade, just heat dust and the low murmur of desperation. The monthly government surplus auction was underway. A battered loudspeaker crackled as items were called out. Canned beans expired, pancake mix, crates of bruised produce. Dozens gathered with vouchers, and hollow hope, mostly older folks, single mothers, and laborers with sun-creased faces and worn-out boots. Harlan Voss stood at the edge of it all, arms crossed, waiting for the seed distributor to show up. His shirt clung to his back, his jeans stiff with salt and sweat. His pickup and ZOA-1 Dodge, that coughed more than it ran, idled in the far lot with its windows down, and a duct-taped sun visor barely holding back the blaze. He hadn't planned on staying long. Get the order, head back north, maybe swing by Dusty's Market for canned chili. His boy Rowan was waiting back at the RV with a bottle of warm water and a book he'd already read twice. That's when he heard it. A voice, sharp, cruel, loud enough to slice through the crackle of the loudspeaker. She ain't mine. Her mom's gone, and I'm not wasting another minute or cent on her. Heads turned. Not everyone, just a few. Most kept their eyes forward. Boots planted. These weren't folks who meddled. Pain was common currency here. Harlan turned. Near a crate of rotting apples stood a man with a crooked back and eyes red from drink. A 6-year-old girl sat beside the crate, arms wrapped around a tattered plush bear. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply watched, still and hollow like a photograph stuck in time. You can call social or whoever. I don't care. I'm done, the man barked, hurling a crumpled bag beside the girl before walking toward his truck. She eats too much, says nothing, and looks at me like I'm poison. I'm not her damn father. The engine of his truck roared to life, and he drove away. No one chased him. Not the auction runners. Not the volunteers sorting dented soup cans. Except Harlan. He was already moving before he knew why. One foot, then another, kicking up swirls of red dust. "Hey," he shouted, chest heaving. "Hey!" The truck kept going. He broke into a full sprint, boots pounding the dirt, the heat searing his throat. He could feel his legs begin to fail, but he pushed harder. 10 feet. 5. His hand grazed the tailgate, and then the truck lurched forward, disappearing in a cloud of choking exhaust. Harlan collapsed onto his knees, palms burning against the gravel. His lungs screamed, his head pounded. Around him murmurs rose. He tried. Someone whispered. "He's got a boy of his own, don't he?" Damn shame. He turned. The girl was still there, still seated beside the crate of apples, her dress stained with dust and sun. Her arms clutched the bear like it was her last possession. Her eyes met his. And something inside Harlan, something long dormant, something he hadn't even realized was still alive, broke open. He stood slowly, wiped the grit from his hands, and walked toward her. Every step felt heavier than the last. His thoughts raced. What the hell am I doing? I can't feed another mouth. I've got $27 in my wallet and half a tank of gas. Rowan will be furious. What if she's broken in ways I can't fix? He stopped in front of her. The girl looked up. "Hey," he said quietly. Do you have anywhere to go?" She shook her head. He crouched. His knees popped like old furniture. He cleared his throat. "My name's Harlan. I've got a boy, Rowan, he's 11. We don't have much, but we've got some space. And he's got books if you like reading." No answer. "You hungry? Still nothing." He lowered his voice. "You want to come with me, just for a bit? Just till someone figures something out." The girl tilted her head. Her lips parted, then closed. Slowly she stood, gripping the bear to her chest. Then she nodded. Somewhere behind him, someone clapped. It wasn't loud, just a single soft clap. Then another joined, and another. It wasn't applause, it was recognition of a man who had nothing offering the little he had left. Harlan didn't look back. He took the girl's small hand, rough with dust, but warm. Together they walked toward the truck. "You got a name, kid?" She paused, then answered in a whisper, as soft as the desert breeze. "Junia." The road back to the edge of Dust Ridge was silent, except for the rattle of the old Dodge pickup and the soft rustle of desert wind slipping through the cracked windows. The girl Junia sat in the passenger seat, knees drawn up, bare held like a shield. She hadn't spoken another word since telling him her name. Harlan kept glancing at her, not out of suspicion, but concern. He didn't know what scared him more, her silence, or the storm he knew was waiting at home. Rowan, his son, wasn't cruel, but he was cautious. Losing his mother so young had hardened him in subtle ways. He didn't cry much, didn't ask for help, and he sure didn't welcome change, especially not the kind that arrived dusty barefoot and clutching a stuffed animal with one eye missing. The truck creaked to a stop beside the RV, an aging Winnebago that sat like a rusting promise at the back of an abandoned mechanic's lot. Its windows were patched with clear tape, its door sometimes stuck if you didn't pull it just right. But inside it was home. Sort of. Harlan stepped out and looked up at the setting sun. The light stretched long and low, painting the RV gold and crimson. He turned back to the passenger seat. "You want to come in?" Junia didn't answer, but she opened the door and followed. Rowan was sitting cross-legged on the torn couch book, in hand a half-eaten apple on the armrest. He looked up as the door opened and froze. "Who's that?" he asked flatly. "This is Junia," Harlan said. "She's staying a few nights." Rowan looked from his father to the girl and back again. Why, Harlan hesitated. "Because she needs a place, and because I said so." Rowan didn't argue. He rarely did. Instead, he simply turned the page of his book and muttered, "We barely have enough for us." Junia stood still, unsure whether to sit or run. Her eyes scanned the cramped space, the peeling wallpaper, the kettle whistling faintly on the stove, the small shelf of mismatched books held together with string. Harlan watched her. She wasn't inspecting the place like a guest. She was searching it like someone trying to figure out if it was safe. "Junia," he said, clearing his throat. "That corner's got a fold-out cot. It's not pretty, but it's soft." Still silent, she moved gently to the cot and sat down, bare on her lap. Her legs dangled above the floor. She didn't remove her shoes. She didn't let go of the bear. Harlan felt the weariness flood in, then the emotional kind. He could handle the heat, the hunger, the breaking down truck. But this was uncharted territory. He started dinner. That night they had peanut butter on stale bread and split a single can of peaches 3 ways. Junia took the smallest portion without being asked. She ate slowly, carefully, as though she wasn't sure when she'd be allowed another bite. Afterward, Rowan climbed into his loft bed and turned to face the wall. Harlan offered Junia a pillow and thin blanket, then sat in the driver's seat, his makeshift recliner, and listened to the creak and pop of the RV, settling in for the night. The desert was silent. No sirens, no traffic, just wind and time. He thought about his wife, Tessa, The way she used to leave the porch light on even when they didn't have electricity inside. "It's not for us," she'd say. "It's in case someone else gets lost." She would have taken Junia in, no question. The guilt settled heavy in his chest. Not guilt over bringing her here, guilt over how much he'd hesitated, over how close he'd come to turning away. At some point, he drifted off. He woke to a sound, soft, rhythmic tapping. He sat up. The clock read 14 a.m. The tapping came again. He turned. Junia was sitting upright, the blanket around her shoulders like a cape. In one hand, she held 2 spoons, tapping the bottom of a metal lunchbox in a simple, steady beat. Her eyes were closed. Her head nodded to a rhythm only she could hear. Beside her, Rowan was peeking down from the loft bed, watching. Not annoyed, not curious. Just listening. When Junia stopped, she opened her eyes slowly and whispered, "I play songs when I can't sleep." Harlan didn't know what to say, but Rowan did. "You were in time," he said quietly. Junia looked up, surprised. "I can show you how to keep the beat better," Rowan added. Junia gave a small nod, the kind of nod that might one day become a smile. The next morning, Harlan returned from a job drop-off to find the 2 kids on the RV steps. Rowan had his book open. Junia sat beside him, reading aloud haltingly, but with effort. Rowan wasn't correcting her. He was listening. Just listening. Harlan's breath caught. The RV hadn't grown bigger overnight. The pantry wasn't fuller. The air conditioner still rattled like a dying animal. But something had changed. They weren't 3 strangers surviving anymore. They were starting to become something else entirely. The desert didn't care if you were healing. It didn't slow its sun or soften its winds just because a girl had started to speak again, or a boy had begun to open up. The desert kept scorching. The dust still found its way into your eyes, your food, and your sleep. Life didn't pause for miracles, no matter how small. But inside the old Winnebago, something delicate was taking root. It began with a box of kitchen scraps. Every morning, Harlan let Junia dump the peels and trimmings into a rusted metal bin beside the RV. He didn't say why, it was habit, from the days when Tessa grew herbs in coffee cans and swore even rotted lettuce had purpose. Junia took the task seriously. Each banana peel was a ceremonial offering, every wilted carrot top a gift. Rowan watched from the step arms folded. He never mocked her, but he didn't join in either, until the day Junia found the spoon. It was wedged between 2 floorboards under the kitchenette. Bent at the handle, chipped at the bowl, its shine long gone. But Junia gasped like she'd discovered treasure. "That's nothing," Harlan said. "Junk." Junia blinked. "It sounds nice." She took the spoon, tapped it against the lunchbox she kept beside her bed, and turned to Rowan. "Play something." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Play what? Anything." He stared at her. Junia had started talking more in recent days, but only to him, never loudly, never more than needed. But there was something about the way she held out that spoon, like it was a conductor's baton, and he was the orchestra. He sighed, then reached under the step for an empty paint can he'd been using to store bottle caps, tipped it upside down, sat beside her. Tap, 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 tap. Junia smiled, then added her own rhythm lighter, irregular like wind, skipping across the desert floor. Harlan peeked through the window and froze. 2 kids. 1 paint can. 1 bent spoon. No electricity. No toys. No fancy instruments. And yet the Winnebago had never sounded so alive. By the end of the week, their band had grown. Rowan rigged an old metal clothes hanger into a triangle, which Junia proudly played with the back of a pencil. They used bottle caps as symbols. Rowan taught her how to keep steady time by tapping her shoe. "You're getting good," he said one afternoon as the sun fell low. Junia shrugged. "You're better." Rowan looked at her serious. That doesn't matter. She tilted her head. Why he didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because when we play together, we're better than either of us alone." Junia didn't speak after that, but she looked at him differently, like maybe he wasn't just a boy who frowned all the time. Maybe he was something else. A brother. Later that night, Harlan sat outside with a mug of weak coffee staring at the stars. He could hear the faint tinkling of spoon and triangle through the open RV window. He thought about money, about how his last 3 jobs had paid late, about the rent on the patch of dirt they parked on, about the hole in the RV's roof that would be trouble come monsoon season. And still, he felt lighter than he had in months. He didn't understand it. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was the way Rowan looked at Junia, now less like an intrusion, more like someone who'd always been there. Or maybe it was because, for the first time since Tessa died, the RV no longer felt haunted. One afternoon, Harlan came home from a double delivery to find a surprise the kids had rearranged the furniture. The fold-out cot was now turned into a stage of sorts, with Junia's bear sitting center, like an audience of one. The paint con had been upgraded, padded with socks for tone control. The triangle was suspended from a coat hook. Rowan grinned. Welcome to the debut of the Dust Ridge Orchestra. Harlan set down his work gloves and sat cross-legged on the floor. Junia bowed. Rowan saluted with his drumstick. They played one of their practiced rhythms, simple, uneven, but full of heart. Then Junia did something that made Harlan lean forward. She sang, not loudly, not perfectly, but clearly, soft and sweet. 1 spoon, 2 hands, 1 boy, 1 girl, in a house with no walls, making music from the world. The words weren't polished. The melody wandered, but it was hers. When she finished, there was silence. Then Harlan clapped. Just once. Then again. Rowan joined. Junia's face lit up in a shy smile. That night, Harlan stayed up after the kids went to bed. He picked up his old guitar from beneath the bench. The strings were dusty, the wood dry. He hadn't touched it in years. He strummed a G chord, out of tune. He adjusted the pegs slowly, strummed again. Better. He played a song he used to sing for Rowan when he was 3, a lullaby with no name, the kind you make up because the real world has no words for grief, only melody. He didn't know Junia was listening until she whispered from her cot. That song makes me feel like rain. Harlan smiled. Me too, kiddo. The first chill of autumn arrived not with a storm, but with a whisper. In Sable Ridge, seasons didn't declare themselves loudly. There was no burst of gold in the trees, no rush of falling leaves. Just a subtle shift, the wind less harsh, the mornings less dry, and the breath that clouded the air when you stepped out just before sunrise. Inside the RV, Junia had taken to waking early, beating Harlan to the stove. She was still too small to reach the burners, but she'd stand barefoot in her pajama pants and fold peanut butter sandwiches with the focus of a surgeon. Rowan usually arrived 10 minutes later, hair a mess, always mumbling about socks and school. Their mornings had taken on a rhythm, quiet, gentle, unspoken. That Monday started no differently. But by late afternoon, everything shifted. Harlan had just pulled into the mechanic lot after a long run delivering irrigation pipes when he saw the principal's number blinking on his phone. His stomach tightened. When he answered, the voice on the other end was calm, but clipped. "Mr. Voss, it's Principal Avery. Nothing serious, Rowan's safe. But we had a small incident today." Rowan sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, tight jaw set. Harlan didn't speak as he drove. He knew better. With Rowan, silence worked better than questions, at least at first. They reached the RV. The sun had dipped below the line of mountains, leaving behind long, violet shadows. Junia met them at the door, eyes wide. Rowan brushed past her, grabbed a book off the table, and headed to the bunk. Harlan sat at the table, let out a long breath, and looked at Junia. "Give us a few, sweetheart." She nodded, retreating to the step outside, bear in tow. When Harlan turned to Rowan, his voice was low. "Want to tell me what happened?" Rowan didn't look up. "It wasn't a big deal. That's not what Principal Avery said. I just shoved him. That's all." Who? Rowan's eyes flickered. Mace Talley. Harlan's brows rose. He knew the Talley family. Ranch money, big truck, small heart. Why, Rowan's voice dropped. He called Junia junkyard girl. Said she was my charity case. Said we were just the trailer trash orphan club. Silence settled like dust between them. Then Harlan leaned back, rubbing his face. "Did you tell anyone?" Rowan scoffed. "Like they'd care." "Rowan, I had to say something, Dad. No one else would." Harlan paused, then nodded slowly. "I'm not mad at you for standing up for her. But you know I don't want you fighting." "I didn't punch him," Rowan mumbled. "That's a start." Outside, Junia sat quietly on the step watching the stars appear one by one. When Rowan stepped out beside her, she didn't turn. "You okay?" he asked. Junia hugged her knees. "He's not wrong. I am from a junkyard." Rowan sat beside her. "You're not junk." She glanced at him. "Then what am I?" He didn't have a smart answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled piece of notebook paper. "Here." Junia unfolded it. Inside was a quote written in Rowan's careful block letters. "You don't throw a diamond away because it's covered in dust." Her lip trembled. "Where'd you get this?" she asked. "From a book. It reminded me of you." Junia looked down again, then whispered. "You didn't have to shove him?" Rowan gave her a look. "Yeah, I did." That night, Junia slipped a note into Rowan's backpack. It wasn't fancy. Just a folded square of lined paper with her handwriting still uneven and tilted. The note read, "You can be the reason someone isn't cold." Inside was her old hoodie, the one with the threadbare sleeves and the faded bare patch. Rowan recognized it instantly. He said nothing, but he wore it the next morning, and he kept the note. By the end of the week, something strange had happened. Rowan was no longer sitting alone at lunch. A girl named Lita, who used to barely speak, now traded carrot sticks with him. A boy named Marcos, who struggled with English, began walking beside him between classes. None of them said it out loud, but they saw what Rowan had done, and it gave them permission to care too. It was a quiet revolution, the kind that didn't come with banners or speeches, just smaller cruelties fading away. One evening, as the three of them sat outside the RV, Junia took the lunchbox drum and handed it to Rowan. "You lead," she said. Harlan raised an eyebrow from his chair. "What's this?" "She's the songwriter," Rowan said. "But I'm her percussionist." Junia giggled softly. They began to play soft taps and clicks beneath a desert sky painted with stars. And Harlan knew deep in his chest that something beautiful was blooming. Not despite the dust, but because of it. The first time Junia saw the guitar, it was asleep. It lay beneath the bench seat in the RV, tucked behind an old tarp and a crate of wrenches. Its case was cracked, one latch broken. Dust clung to its black surface like old grief. She discovered it on a Wednesday morning while helping Harlan look for duct tape. He reached for the toolbox. She crouched low, brushing aside the tarp, and there it was, hidden like a secret someone hadn't decided to keep or forget. She paused, then whispered, "Whose is this?" Harlan turned too slowly. "That was hers," he said quietly. "Tessa's." Junia didn't ask who Tessa was. She didn't need to. The way Harlan's voice shifted told her everything. It was the name he wore inside his bones. "I didn't know she played," Junia murmured. "She didn't," Harlan said. "It was mine. She bought it for me on our first anniversary. Said it was time I stopped playing the table." Junia gently traced a finger along the latch. "Does it still work?" "Doesn't matter," Harlan muttered, already turning away. "No one plays it now." But Junia couldn't forget it. That night, when Rowan had gone to bed, and Harlan was outside making a call about a hauling job, she pulled the guitar out. It was heavier than she expected. The wood had dried out in the desert heat, and one of the strings hung loose like a tired voice. She didn't strum it. Not yet. She just sat with it, held it in her lap like a sleeping animal. Then slowly, carefully, she took a rag and began to clean it. It took 3 nights. On the 4th, Rowan caught her. "You're gonna wake it up," he teased from the ladder to his bunk. Junia didn't turn. "Maybe it wants to be awake." Rowan climbed down, crouched beside her, and picked at a string. "Oof, that's bad." "I know. I can tune it." Junia looked up. You know how Rowan shrugged. "Sort of. Dad showed me when I was little. Before." Junia didn't press for details. Some words lived behind locked doors. She respected that. She simply nodded, and together they tightened the pegs, fingered the frets, listened for notes that no longer remembered their names. By midnight, the guitar could whisper again. The next evening, Harlan came home to the sound of music. He stopped outside the RV door, one hand still on the frame, as the notes drifted out, fragile, uneven, but unmistakable. His heart stuttered. He hadn't heard that sound in 6 years. He stepped inside. Junia sat cross-legged, cradling the guitar. Her fingers were awkward on the strings, but determined. Rowan tapped along with a spoon on the edge of the sink, offering rhythm like an old friend. They didn't see Harlan at first. When Junia did, she froze. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes wide. "I just wanted to fix it." Harlan didn't speak. He walked to the bench, sat down slowly, reached out and took the guitar from her hands, not to scold, but to hold it himself. He plucked a G chord. It rang out soft, but whole. Then he adjusted a peg, cleared his throat, and began to play. The song was old, wordless. He had made it up once for a baby who couldn't sleep, and a wife who cried at lullabies. His fingers stumbled at first, but found their way again. Junia sat perfectly still. Rowan stopped tapping. Watched. When the final note faded, no one spoke for a long time. Then Junia said, "That song makes me feel like rain." Harlan's throat tightened. It used to make her feel that way too. From that day, the guitar stayed out. It leaned against the table leg like a family member no one had invited, but everyone was glad to see. Harlan didn't play often, only at night when the kids were brushing their teeth or pretending to sleep. But the sound of it changed the air in the RV. It softened the metal, made the corners feel round. Junia began to hum when she did the dishes. Rowan whistled in the mornings. Even the silences felt fuller. One Sunday they sat outside as the sun sank into the ridge. Junia held the guitar. Rowan had a shoebox drum. Harlan strummed beside them. They played nothing in particular, just sounds, just feeling. A neighbor passing by with a bag of firewood stopped and listened. "You folks starting a band?" he joked. Harlan smiled. "Just making noise." The man chuckled. "Well, keep doing it. It sounds like hope." That night, as the stars returned and the air turned cool, Harlan sat with the guitar on his lap and a mug of coffee in his hand. Junia leaned her head on his shoulder. Rowan leaned on the other. And for a moment, just a breath, it felt like the past wasn't heavy. Like the dust of grief had settled, and something sacred had grown in its place. The sky over Sable Ridge didn't often change its mind. It was sun, or it was stars, nothing in between. But that October evening it turned a color Harlan hadn't seen in years. Bruised lavender, like the skin around a healing wound. He stood behind the supply trailer outside Reyes Feed and Seed, loading a sack of alfalfa into his pickup, when he noticed the shift. The wind had dropped its dry rasp and turned slow, almost patient. There was a smell to it too, electric wet, impossible. Rain, which meant only one thing. A monsoon was coming. By the time Harlan pulled onto the dirt road leading to the mechanic's lot, The storm had begun to snarl. Wind slapped at the windshield. Lightning sketched frantic lines across the horizon. He could see the RV in the distance just barely, and the sight made his chest clench. He was late. Too late. Inside the RV, Junia sat, curled on the cot, knees pulled to her chest, bear clutched tight. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the ceiling where wind howled through the gaps, like a ghost trying to find a way in. Rowan was beside her, sweat glistening on his forehead blanket around his shoulders, though the heat hadn't broken. His breathing came shallow too fast. Junia had heard that sound before, when her mother was sick, when she couldn't get enough air. She slid off the cot and grabbed the emergency inhaler from the drawer beside the sink. Rowan took it with shaking hands. 2 puffs. He closed his eyes, waiting, hoping. Junia sat beside him. "You're okay," she whispered, her voice almost too steady to be 6 years old. "You're not alone." Another gust of wind rattled the RV like a toy. Junia reached for the lunchbox drum but paused. Not this time. This time, she sang. Not for music, for calm. Light above me, light within. Breathe it in, breathe it in. Storm may shake, but we don't fall. We're together. We've got it all. Her voice was soft and cracked at the edges, but it filled the space between them like a quilt. Rowan's breathing slowed, then steadied. He opened his eyes. "You're weird," he mumbled. Junia smiled. "So are you." Harlan kicked open the RV door just as thunder boomed behind him. He was drenched jacket clinging to him like a second skin. His eyes scanned the space in panic, and then slowly the terror in his chest unraveled. Rowan was propped against a pillow color returning to his face. Junia sat beside him, hair wild from static, singing the last lines of something he didn't recognize. They looked up in unison. "Hey," Junia said, calm as anything. "We made it." Harlan blinked. "You what? We were scared," Rowan said. "She wasn't." Junia shrugged. "I was a little." Harlan dropped his bag and sank to the bench, soaked and trembling. "I thought he stopped. I thought I'd lost you both." "You didn't," Rowan said. She kept the roof from caving in. Junia shook her head. "I just sang." "You saved your brother," Harlan said quietly. There was no correction from Junia, no protest of bloodlines or biology, just a small, knowing nod. The storm raged until morning. At some point, all three curled up on the floor, Rowan between them, Junia's bear shared between his chest and hers. Outside, water dripped from the eaves. Thunder growled like an old dog losing interest. Inside, there was only breath warmth and the quiet miracle of survival. Morning brought silence, the kind of silence that followed storms, thick, reverent. The RV was damp but intact. Some papers were wet, the door latch needed fixing, but nothing major. They'd been lucky. Or maybe something more. As Harlan stepped outside to survey the damage, Junia followed. The desert was steaming, the scent of wet earth rising like incense. She stood barefoot, blinking into the new light arms, crossed shoulders tight. Harlan watched her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "I didn't know storms could sound like monsters." "They can," he said. "But they don't last." Junia thought for a moment. "Rowan gets scared too." "He does. Not many people see that." "You did." She looked up at him, eyes earnest. "Is that why you brought me here? Because I see things?" "No," Harlan said, kneeling to meet her gaze. "I brought you here because no one else did. But I kept you here because you made us whole again." Junia didn't speak. She didn't need to. That night, Rowan brought out the guitar. "Dad," he said, "play the song." Harlan blinked. Which one? Junia answered for him. The one that feels like rain. He smiled, picked up the guitar, tuned it slowly. When he strummed the first chord, Junia picked up the spoon. Rowan joined with his shoebox drum. Together, they created something soft. sacred and entirely their own. Outside, the desert slept. Inside, they played on. And for the first time, it didn't feel like surviving anymore. It felt like beginning. The week after the storm passed quietly, almost as if the desert itself were tired. Dust Ridge resumed its slow rhythm, men repairing fences, children returning to school, and the corner grocery reopening with fewer dents than expected. But inside the Voss RV, something had shifted more than shingles or window frames. A stillness had settled not from weariness, but from something gentler. From peace. Yet peace had a way of bringing the past to the surface, like water, drawing up long buried roots. It was Saturday when Harlan drove to the county seat in Rockbridge. He'd been putting it off for weeks. The paperwork for foster status had sat in his glove box, folded in quiet guilt. But after the storm, after seeing Junia cradle Rowan's fear, like it was her own, there was no more room for hesitation. She was family. He walked into the child welfare office with his paperwork in hand, prepared for signatures and standard questions. But he didn't expect the woman behind the desk to blink twice at Junia's name. "You said Junia? Kincaid?" "Yes, ma'am." The woman, middle-aged and worn but kind, reached for a folder. "We do have something on file." "Not much." She was in the system briefly. Entered through emergency services. Stepfather left her behind at a food relief site. I was there. The woman nodded, but her brow furrowed. "There's one item here. A letter. Addressed to her. Never delivered." Harlan sat straighter. From who? She pulled it from a faded envelope. Her birth mother. It was left with the intake documents. "I don't believe Junia ever received it. I don't even know if she knows it exists." Harlan took the envelope carefully. No return address. Just one name written in a flowing, unsteady hand, Marietta. He didn't open it on the drive home. Not even at the stoplight that always took too long. Not even when he hit the patch of washboard road and the envelope shifted in his pocket like a heartbeat. Back at the RV, he slid it into the drawer beneath the bench. Not because he meant to hide it, but because he didn't yet know if it would hurt more than heal. That evening, Junia sat at the table painting stars on the inside of a cereal box. She said it was for a project, but Harlan suspected it was something deeper. Since the storm, she had developed a fascination with the night sky, as if each pinpoint of light were a door she might someday open. Rowan leaned over her shoulder. "Looks like the Andromeda cluster," he said. Junia beamed. "You're making that up." "Totally. But it sounds real." "Right." She laughed, a full sound that surprised even her. Harlan watched them, the envelope still resting like a stone in his mind. That night, he sat alone with the letter and finally opened it. "Dear Junia, if you're reading this, then you're still here. That's the only thought that keeps me breathing tonight. I know I won't be able to hold your hand at your next birthday. I may not be here when you learn to write your name in cursive or tie your shoes without thinking. But you should know that you were always, always my brightest note. I named you Junia after a woman in the old stories who was brave and kind and strong. I think you'll live up to her name in ways I never could. I hope you find someone who sees how fiercely you shine. I hope you find music. And I hope, more than anything, you find a place that says, you belong here. Sing if you can Junebug, even if no one is listening. Love, always Mom." The ink had bled slightly. It had likely been written in a hospital room, the kind with too much white and too many beeps. But the words felt alive, as if they had waited for the exact moment they were most needed. Harlan sat for a long time. Then he folded the letter carefully, placed it back into its envelope, and whispered, "Soon." 3 days later, he found Junia drawing stars again, this time on Rowan's backpack. He knelt beside her. "Can I show you something?" She looked up, hesitant, then nodded. He handed her the envelope. "This was from your mom. It was written before you came to me. Before the storm. Before everything. Junia didn't take it right away. She stared at it. Then at him. I didn't know she wrote. She did. She held the envelope in both hands. Do I have to read it now? No, Harlan said gently. You don't have to do anything. It's yours. Forever. Just when you're ready. Junia nodded slowly. She didn't cry. But she held the envelope like it was breath. That night, as the three of them sat outside under the stars, Junia looked up and whispered, I think she'd like it here. Rowan glanced over. Your mom. Junia nodded. She liked music, and stars, and brave people. Rowan poked her side. You forgot weirdos. Junia smirked. And weirdos. Harlan strummed the guitar softly, letting the moment hold. Junia closed her eyes. And somewhere inside her chest, a door creaked open, not from pain, but from light. The air in Dust Ridge always smelled a little like iron and old sagebrush after it rained. But on that morning, it carried something different, something nervous and sweet, like sheet music before it's played. Junia woke early, even before the sun had fully risen above the mesa. She tiptoed barefoot around the RV, her bear tucked beneath one arm, the envelope from her mother still resting beneath her pillow. She hadn't opened it again, not yet, but she kept it close like a compass she wasn't ready to follow, but trusted to point north when the time came. Today wasn't about the past. Today it was about the chapel. The local elementary school held an annual fall fundraiser at the old sandstone chapel on the hill, half community fair, half talent showcase. Most years, it was filled with enthusiastic but off-key performances, brownies overbaked with good intentions, and grandparents applauding everything like it was Carnegie Hall. But this year, the principal had asked Junia if she'd like to sing. Word had gotten around through Rowan mostly, and then through the thin walls of the RV as neighbors passed and paused to listen to her quiet voice humming under the stars. At first, Junia said no. Absolutely not. People will laugh, she whispered. No, they won't, Rowan replied. You did, she said, narrowing her eyes. I didn't laugh, Rowan corrected. I choked on my cereal. That's different. But he knew better than to push. So did Harlan. Instead, they waited. And then one night after she finished rereading her mother's letter, Junia walked out onto the RV step, looked at the sky, and simply said, Okay. The chapel was small sandstone and sun-stained with wooden pews that creaked louder than the floorboards. The ceiling rose higher than it needed to, and every sound inside it echoed like it had somewhere holy to go. Harlan tuned the guitar in the corner. Rowan sat with a cajon between his knees, tapping out a rhythm under his breath. Junia paced silently in front of the stage, her hands twitching by her sides. You don't have to do this, Harlan said softly. Junia shook her head. I do. She paused, then added, Not for me. Harlan tilted his head. Then for who? Junia looked up at him. Her voice didn't waver. For her. He didn't ask if she meant her mother. He didn't have to. Backstage, Junia waited in the wings as a third grader performed a recitation about pumpkins. Someone played a kazoo. Someone else juggled apples and dropped 2 of them. Then the lights dimmed. A teacher stepped onto the small platform. Our next performer is someone who reminds us all why we hold this event in the first place. Her name is Junia, and she's going to sing a song she wrote herself. A hush fell, not because of anticipation, but because of curiosity. Few people had ever heard Junia speak above a whisper. Fewer still knew she'd written anything. She walked on stage, small frame, bare feet, hair braided in 2 uneven plaits. She wore Rowan's hand-me-down denim shirt tied at the waist and a skirt made from scraps stitched by hand. She stepped up to the microphone, then paused. In the front row, Rowan gave her a thumbs up so awkward it nearly made her laugh. Harlan strummed a soft intro behind her. Junia closed her eyes and began. There's a chapel made of dust, with a door that's never locked, and inside it lives a silence that once used to feel like loss. But someone sang a broken note, and someone fixed the strings, and now this little house of echoes is filled with sacred things. Her voice was not loud, was not trained, but it was true, and that made all the difference. By the time she reached the final verse, there were people wiping their eyes. Not because the song was perfect, but because it wasn't. It was brave. It was raw. It was real. And in a town where everything was too dusty, or too worn, or too forgotten, Junia's voice sounded like a beginning. After the final chord faded, no one clapped right away. They just sat there, caught in the grace of a small miracle. Then the first pair of hands came together, an old woman with cloud-white hair. Then another, and another, until the entire chapel stood, applauding a girl they didn't know well, but would never forget. Backstage, Junia sat on the edge of the stage, feet swinging. Rowan flopped down beside her, Kajan in his lap. "You killed it," he said. "I didn't kill anything," Junia said. "I just told the truth." Rowan looked at her with something like admiration. "You know, he said you're kinda weird." Junia grinned. "Thanks." Harlan stepped up, guitar in hand. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms. And Junia leaned in. Not because she had to, because she could. That night, back at the RV, Junia finally unfolded her mother's letter again. She read it slowly, lips moving in silence. Then she took a pen and wrote one small line at the bottom. I sang, "Mom." Even if no one had listened, I would have. The week after the chapel performance, strangers started saying hello. At the gas station, the cashier, who'd once barely made eye contact, now handed Junia a lollipop just because. At the laundromat, a woman asked Harlan if the girl who sang might teach her granddaughter a few notes. Junia didn't quite know what to do with the attention. She still walked with her shoulders slightly rounded, as though expecting the world to come down hard again. But it didn't. Instead, it opened. Small ways, quiet ways, like the neighbor down the lot fixing the broken screen on their RV window, or Rowan's classmate Lita leaving a note on Junia's desk that said, "You sing like water feels." And Junia in turn began giving back. She didn't do it for praise. She did it because that's what her mother had written in the letter, that she hoped Junia would find people who let her shine, and that when she did, she'd help others do the same. So when the family in the next trailer couldn't afford firewood, Junia used the tips she'd gotten from her first paid performance at the chapel to buy a bundle. She left it anonymously tied with twine. When the library's story time lost its volunteer, Junia offered to read aloud, though her voice trembled on every first sentence. She showed Rowan how to harmonize on the guitar. He acted annoyed, but stayed up late every night practicing the chords she suggested. "You're turning into a walking Hallmark card," he teased. "And you're just mad I'm better at G7, she shot back. Harlan watched them quietly, one hand always near the guitar now, as though it had become part of his body again. He didn't say much about what Junia was doing, but he made sure her shoes were patched when they wore thin. He filled the gas tank without her asking when she mentioned wanting to visit the retirement home on Sundays to sing for the veterans. And at night, when she fell asleep with her bear tucked against her side and sheet music under her pillow, he sometimes stood at the door watching her breathe, awed that someone so small could carry so much light. One morning, a letter arrived. No return address, just a gold star sticker in the corner and a typewritten page inside. It was from a small nonprofit in Santa Fe that ran a mobile music program for underfunded schools. Someone at the chapel had recorded Junia's song and submitted it anonymously. The letter said Junia had been chosen to be featured in their annual winter benefit. She'd have a chance to perform in front of hundreds of donors and community leaders. Travel and lodging would be covered. All she had to do was say yes. Junia read the letter 3 times, then a 4th. Then she folded it and handed it to Harlan. "I don't think I want to go." He studied her carefully. "Why not?" She bit her lip. "Because people will expect more now. Because they'll stare. Because I'm scared I'll stop being me." Harlan set the letter down and pulled a chair beside her. "You don't owe anyone more than you are," he said. "If you want to go, we'll go. If you don't, we'll keep singing on the RV steps. Either way, Junia doesn't disappear." She blinked, surprised. Rowan said if I turned it down, he'd say it was because he sings better. "That's blackmail," Harlan said, straight-faced. Junia cracked a smile. "I told him he can carry my amp if I say yes." So, she looked at the window, where the sky was beginning to soften into pink. "I think I will," she whispered. "But I want to do it our way. Our way. No makeup. No stage lights. Just the guitar. Just the song." Harlan nodded. "Then that's exactly what we'll give them." That Sunday, Junia visited the retirement home for the first time. She brought her bear a folding chair and a songbook she'd made with Rowan, each page, handwritten, each lyric stitched together from truth. She sang to a room of wheelchairs and wise eyes, her voice echoing across polished linoleum. Afterward, one elderly man named Peter, once a jazz drummer in New Orleans, took her hand and said, "You're the kind of sound God sends through cracked walls." Junia didn't know what to say, so she just nodded, eyes wet, and squeezed his hand back. That night, Harlan pulled out an old tin box from beneath the seat. Inside were ticket stubs, faded photos, a napkin with Tessa's lipstick print. He added something new, the letter from Santa Fe. Then he wrote on a torn scrap of paper and tucked it inside. She's not just surviving. She's singing. In the desert, birthdays were quiet. No streamers, no balloons caught in trees, no cupcakes stacked in towers or glitter confetti on polished floors. But in the Voss RV on Junia's 13th birthday, the morning air felt thick with something unspoken, like hope wrapped in flannel. She woke to the smell of cinnamon and the clatter of mismatched pans. Harlan was at the tiny stove working on his first ever batch of French toast. Junia sat up slowly, blinking at the warm sun spilling through the cracked blinds. "Happy birthday, Junebug," he said with a soft grin. She smiled sleepily. "Is that smoke supposed to be there?" He turned with a laugh and waved a dish towel in front of the toaster. Just atmospheric effects. Rowan emerged from the back room, hair unbrushed, a gift in his hand, a small square box wrapped in newspaper comics. He tossed it onto her blanket with exaggerated nonchalance. "Don't get too emotional," he said. "It's not like I made it or anything." Junia opened the box. Inside was a paper star, folded carefully, precisely 37 folds in total. She could tell. He'd stayed up late. The edges were trimmed in silver pen, and at the center was one simple line in Rowan's sharp block print. "You shine, even when you don't want to." Junia stared at it for a long moment. Then, without a word, she leaned over and wrapped her arms around him. Rowan squirmed but didn't pull away. "Yeah, okay," he muttered. "Fine." Hug limit reached. Later that afternoon, as the day warmed and the wind returned to its slow desert rhythm, Harlan told Junia he had one more gift. She followed him out to the picnic table behind the mechanics lot, the sky above them, a clean sheet of blue. He handed her an envelope. Not new, its edges were frayed, the ink faded by time. "This was your mother's," he said. "You've read her letter. This is something she left with it. I waited to give it to you until I was sure you were ready." Junia opened the envelope with care. Inside was a photograph. It was creased and warm from age. A woman her mother stood on a dusty porch, holding a guitar awkwardly. Her smile was bright even through the faded colors. Beside her was a handwritten lyric sheet. Scribbled. Imperfect. Beautiful. Junia traced her mother's face with one finger. She was younger than me now when she wrote that song, Harlan said. She called it, "For the Voice I Haven't Met Yet." Junia blinked fast. She meant me? She did. They sat in silence, sunlight stretching between them. Junia looked up. "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Harlan didn't hesitate. "I think she already is." That evening, Junia gathered her courage and unfolded the lyric sheet. She read each word as though decoding a map. There were lines she didn't understand, lines she wanted to rewrite. But the heart of it pulsed with something timeless. It was unfinished. And that gave her an idea. The performance in Santa Fe was 2 weeks away. But she didn't want to wait until then to honor her mother's voice, so she proposed something unexpected. "I want to sing it here first," she told Harlan. At the chapel, he raised an eyebrow. "Just us, no?" "The whole town?" He smiled. "You planning a concert, huh?" "Thank you." Word spread quickly like everything in Dust Ridge. People who had never heard Junia speak were now setting aside folding chairs and stringing up paper lanterns around the chapel steps. They didn't come for spectacle. They came for her. On the night of the performance, the chapel lawn glowed under strings of soft yellow light. The wind was mild, the stars awake. Harlan sat with the guitar in his lap, Rowan beside him, tapping gently on his shoebox drum. Junia stepped up to the mic, dressed in a simple cotton dress and wearing the paper star pinned to her chest. She looked out at the crowd, neighbors, classmates, strangers who had become something closer. "I didn't know my mother," she began, but she left me a song. It wasn't finished. So I did my best to meet it halfway. She inhaled, exhaled, and began to sing. She wrote the verses. "When I was a name, a hope, a maybe. Not yet flame. And now I'm here, with feet in sand." A voice she dreamt inside her hand. Her voice was steadier now. Not louder, but sure. Like the wind had learned to carry it without fraying the edges. In the back row, an old man who had never cried in public let one tear fall. A woman who once called Junia the mechanic's kid clutched her husband's hand. Rowan mouthed every word like a prayer. And Harlan didn't try to stop the tears. When the song ended, Junia stepped back from the microphone. She didn't bow. She just smiled. Not because they clapped, but because she had sung it. Fully. Freely. As if her mother were somewhere in the front row smiling back. That night back in the RV, Junia tucked the lyric sheet into her songbook. She placed the paper star on her windowsill. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't fall asleep holding her bear. She didn't need to. She had found her voice, and it had led her home. The morning of the Santa Fe benefit. The desert was still. It wasn't silence. It was reverence. Like the earth knew something sacred was about to be offered, and had paused to listen. Junia stood outside the RV in her denim jacket and boots, the paper star pinned over her heart. Her guitar rested against the picnic table, its strings freshly tuned and gleaming in the early light. Rowan came out first, hair flattened oddly on one side, carrying a thermos he claimed held coffee, but likely only held warm chocolate milk. "You nervous?" he asked. Junia looked at the horizon. "A little." He nudged her shoulder. "You'll do great. And if you mess up, just say it was a remix." She grinned. "Deal." Harlan stepped out last, adjusting the strap of the guitar case over his shoulder. He looked at Junia for a long moment, like he was trying to memorize her, just as she was. "You ready, Junebug?" She nodded. "I think I've been getting ready my whole life." The venue in Santa Fe was nothing like the chapel. It was clean, crisp, and grand pewless, and modern, with rows of cushioned seats and lights aimed with surgical precision. The room buzzed with polite applause and soft murmurs, donors in tailored coats, artists with carefully tousled hair, volunteers scanning clipboards. Junia stood in the wings, hand slightly clammy guitar slung across her back. Harlan and Rowan waited just off stage. "You don't have to do this if it doesn't feel right," Harlan whispered. Junia glanced at him. "It does. Just not like I thought it would." So she looked at the crowd, and then back at her family. "I used to think the miracle was singing in a place like this, but now I know it was singing at all." Harlan swallowed. "You're more than I ever hoped for, kid." Rowan gave her a fist bump. "Don't get emotional. I already promised to cry once today, and I'm pacing myself." When the MC called her name, she walked on stage into the lights, not with fear, but with intention. She stood in front of the mic, looked out at the polished, polite faces, and smiled. "I come from a town called Dust Ridge. Not many people know it, but it's where I found my voice. Not in a studio, not on a stage, on the steps of an RV, beside a boy who used to think he was alone, in the arms of a man who stopped for a girl no one else would." She paused. "This song is for them, for the people who didn't walk away." Then she began. "We don't choose the storms, we don't beg the rain, but we choose the ones who stay through the pain. There's music in silence, a home in a name, and a girl in the dust who sang through the flame." Her voice wasn't loud, but it reached. It reached every back row, every quiet heart, every grown adult who remembered being a child afraid to speak, every parent who had made hard choices, every sibling who didn't know how to say, "I love you," but stayed anyway. When the final chord faded, the silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. And then they stood, a standing ovation, not for perfection, but for presence. Backstage, Junia collapsed into Harlan's arms, shaking with disbelief. They clapped. She whispered. "You sang." Rowan gave a mock bow. "Clearly I carried the harmony." Harlan laughed, tears still clinging to the corners of his eyes. "You did more than sing, Junia. You gave them something they didn't know they needed." The ride home was quiet, exhausted, but peaceful. Junia sat by the window watching the landscape flatten back into the warm, familiar loneliness of Dust Ridge. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like return. Back in town, something had changed. People stopped to talk, not to praise, but to connect, to say, "Thank you." A woman at the bakery slipped Junia an extra loaf with a wink. A mechanic offered to check their RV brakes on the house. A boy in Rowan's class started writing his own lyrics. And Harlan got offered a full-time delivery contract with the county. It's not much, he said, handing Junia the schedule. But it's ours. One evening, just after dusk, the three of them sat on the RV roof with paper cups of lemonade. The stars blinked awake and the sky turned velvet. Junia held her guitar. Rowan tapped a rhythm on the cooler lid. Harlan strummed softly, eyes half closed. They played the song again. No audience, no microphones, just them. The people who stayed. Later that night, Junia pulled her journal from beneath the mattress. Inside were pages of lyrics, sketches of stage lights and stars, clippings of programs, and the photograph of her mother. She added a new page. At the top, she wrote, "Final verse. The miracle wasn't the music, or even the song I found inside. It was love, quiet and stubborn, that never once said goodbye." She closed the book, turned off the light, and slept without fear. If this story touched something quiet in you, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Whether it's a small town like Dust Ridge or a big city far away, your presence here means more than you know. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about kindness, healing, and the quiet miracles we sometimes overlook, feel free to subscribe. No pressure, just a warm invitation to stay connected. And truly, thank you for spending your time here with me today. In a world that moves fast, It means everything that you chose to slow down and listen. Until next time, take care of your heart and of each other.